So Stu Peters is he's a right winger. He's got an odd little history. Hold on one second. This is from the, in case you don't know who he is, let's jump right into this. This is from the Daily Beast. The MAGA's new shock jock is a bounty hunter with a troubled past. When Georgia gubernatorial candidate Vernon Jones appeared last month on an internet show hosted by right-wing personality Stu Peters, Jones could have reasonably expected a softball interview. Jones, a former Democratic state representative, now became a darling on the right after he endorsed Donald Trump's re-election bid. Now he's the leading primary challenger to Brian Kemp, with endorsements from Mike Flynn and Rudy Giuliani. But Peters tore into Jones, citing a 2010 discrimination judgment against a Georgia county. Jones once ran to accuse the candidate, who is black, of discriminating against white employees. The interview grew heated after Peters muted Jones. Jones quit the call. That's what bullies do, Peters thundered to his audience. They gaslight you, shout you down, lie incessantly to avoid the light of truth from being shined on their dark corruption. Tone deaf? Yes. Right. Okay. Let's see. Arizona Republican Wendy Rogers, a leading backer of the controversial Arizona audit, withdrew her endorsement of Jones after the Peters interview. Jones has been dogged by questions, blah, blah. Peters has risen to the far right over the past few months as sort of slightly less unhinged version of Alex Jones. Well, Alex didn't start this way. It's a natural destination for this type of travel on the road of life, pumping out coronavirus disinformation and other conspiracy theories while allying himself with Trump world figures like Lin Wood. Amid his calls for Anthony Fauci's execution, Peters amassed a sizable audience of nearly 300,000 followers on Telegram and played host on his show to figures as prominent as Arizona GOP chair Kelly Ward. The Jones fracas represented a new high point for his influence. Let's see. Peters' rise reflects a tumultuous environment of digital right-wing media, where a previously little-known bounty hunter can emerge out of practically nowhere to become a power player. Along the way, Peters has had plenty of his own run-ins with the law. 1 a.m. February 19th, Peters' wife called the police in Red Wing, Minnesota, claiming Peters was in a drunken rage after getting home from his bowling league. In an angry scramble to find his phone, according to an account from Peters' wife recorded in a police report, he had allegedly started to berate her and thrown household items, including boots and pillows at her. In Minnesota, pillows? Was Mike Pillow present at the scene of the crime? Probably. Throw the Giza sheets. All right. Arriving on the scene, police officers found Peters, who appeared to be intoxicated. His wife showed officers videos she had recorded of her husband yelling at her and throwing objects at her. According to the report, asked whether she was concerned Peters would attack her. She said, "That's the reason I had to call you guys," and nodded yes, according to the report. His wife told officers that her husband regularly became belligerently drunk, saying incidents like the one that night were, in the words of one officer at the scene, happening too frequently. "I don't know what he's capable of doing when he's drinking," she said, according to the report. Peters gave police shifting explanations about how he'd gotten so drunk, as well as how the altercation began. "I know how this goes, so I'm the guy that goes bowling and gets drunk. I come home and the wife is pissed that I'm drunk." It's like the inversion of it's like a drama version of the Honeymooners. "You're ruining my kids' lives. I'll never earn a goddamn dime," Peters said in the video, according to it. After his arrest, Peters, struck by his hostility to coronavirus measures, refusing to be swabbed to test for the virus. "If someone sticks something up my nose while I'm in handcuffs, you will be arresting me for something a lot more serious," he said, according to the police. "I will physically resist anybody trying to do anything to my body." This is Peters' bounty hunting turned tragic in 2017 when Peters tried to catch a fugitive who had absconded to Texas at a Texas car dealership. Two bounty hunters working for Peters located the suspect, who was wanted on charges of DUI, assaulting a police officer, and possession of cocaine. As they attempted to detain the man, he pulled a gun, prompting a shootout in a dealership crowded with customers and employees. At the end of the gunfight, the suspect and the two bounty hunters had all been fatally shot. Later, the dealership's owner claimed the bounty hunters had falsely identified themselves as federal agents. This year, Peters emerged from obscurity as the face of Red Voice Media. Yeah, he's not there anymore. He's on Frank Speech. There he is. Look at that. Frank Clips. And he's got a special guest, the kind that you love to see. Jimmy Dore sees what's going on and isn't afraid to talk about it. Or has found a particularly virulent form of bullshit and is making money off of it. Could be that as well. What's the fear? He lives in fucking America. All right.
Jimmy Dore is a based comedian and host of the Jimmy Dore Show.
He's based. Jimmy's based now. He might as well just re-register as a Republican now. Just register as MAGA.
And he joins us now. Jimmy, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you being here.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. I mean, do you agree, obviously, that
We have shared
this is
pain.
not
Yes.
comedy?
When you mentioned Stephen Colbert, it's just like a knife in my stomach, man. It's like I used to love and admire that guy. He was a hero. I think he did the best political, satirical, comedic program ever in the history. I think it was great. And it turns out the reason why he was so able to do that character on his Stephen Colbert Report
is because he's a fantastic actor and improv artist
show
and really fucking funny, and he understands irony,
is because that person is in him, right? He didn't have to go far to channel that.
What? So, I see. So, at his heart, Stephen Colbert is actually a right-winger. Okay.
He was channeling something, and it was something in his unconscious, his shadow.
His shadow. Jimmy's done some shadow work. He wants you to know that. And so he can get in touch with just his awfulness. And it worked. He's gotten in touch with it. As a matter of fact, it's completely taken over.
Is that person. And I have a theory about people who focus, the people who are the most triggered by Trump, the people who focus the most on Trump, and who...
Chicks, you know, like women at the Women's March. If you would knit a hat over Trump, clearly you're a wannabe fascist. I mean, what's the difference between a pussy hat and an iron cross?
Who pretend like he's the cause of all our problems.
Nobody believes he's the cause of all of our problems. Nobody thinks that. This is like softball gaslighting, gish gallop horseshit.
Are the people who are most like Trump in their shadow, right? So there's a
You're upsetting Stu. He doesn't know what you mean.
Concept in Jungian theory, right? That whatever you hate about someone else can tell you something about yourself. Whatever.
Or you actually think the behavior is bad. Like you can despise rapists and murderers for other reasons than you secretly wish you could get away with it. Eh?
Annoys you about the other person can tell.
Yeah, that's annoyance. We're not talking about annoyance. We're talking about criminal behavior. This is as dumb as Trump saying, they're just coming after me to get to you. For you saying to Billy Bush, you would grab women by the pussy without asking.
Tell you something about yourself, because that's the part of yourself that you have pushed into your unconscious that's in you. And so I never got triggered by Trump, right? I always saw Trump as a game show host, which is what he was, a billionaire game show host that the establishment loved. They loved. They gave him a network television show for 10 years. They celebrated him, right? And
no, it was kind of a joke. It was embarrassing. The suckers thought it was a real show. Everybody else watched it because they were watching either their favorite celebrities or a bunch of these like normies embarrassing themselves trying to suck up to this bullshitter.
They all went to each other's kids' weddings. They all played golf together.
Good choice of pictures. That's the party that he's at with Epstein.
Together. They all went to Epstein Island together. They loved him. They're in the class solidarity, right? And so the people who are the most triggered by Trump, so that's how I look at Trump. So when I hear Trump, I get upset at.
By the way, that's Stu Peters people playing that video of Trump.
The system,
in theory,
that gave us Trump. And the system that gave us Trump is because people who voted for Barack Obama twice weren't going to vote for Hillary Clinton because
all of them did, except for 75,000 in 3 different states, spread over, like divided evenly amongst 3 states. She beat him by 3 million votes. Calm the fuck down.
Because they voted for Barack Obama twice and their lives got worse.
No, they didn't. If you'll recall, when Obama came into office, the economy was quite literally crashing. It didn't get worse. And the ACA, 13 years on, is increasingly popular.
And so people had it with the system, right? Because
No. Trump did not win because of a populist revolt against the system. If that was the case, he would have won the popular vote, and Hillary Clinton wouldn't have even fucking charted.
Democratic Party turned their back on workers. And when they did that, that's why they have to hyper focus on identity politics. And that's the world we're living in now. And that's.
Yeah, it's all this chick and gay stuff. And, They elected somebody like Joe Biden, who's totally anti-union, just so he could, get all this gay and chick stuff through, right, Jimmy?
And now everything is reported through the corporate bought media. Let's remember that Big Pharma funds corporate news 70%.
Absolutely,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. They totally fund it. Absolutely. Well, I mean, obviously Big Pharma doesn't make the catheters that they sell on Fox News or whatever. And obviously My Pillow was a giant beneficiary of the Trump presidency as far as, until he lost across the last 4 years in particular. And also, if they created a vaccine, for example, that killed everybody or did something horrible, even if they made billions of dollars on the front end of it, the end result would be pitchforks outside their offices and a failed attempt to outdo one of their competitors with a fake product, which just in terms of market analytics would be shit.
And everything's brought to you by Pfizer. And so
is it?
My point is that
look at this. Here's the Pfizer thing on this. Is 60 Minutes I don't even know what that overtime. Okay, that's 60 Minutes overtime. The Pfizer logo is right there overlaying it, but it says, which is that theirs or that from the ad on the thing they're sponsoring it? Ask Dr. Gupta about your family's sugar intake. Which is, we've got a pill. That's the thing about that Pfizer, that 60 Minutes overtime. If you watch it, like, eat all the sugar you want. Pfizer has a pill that makes it inert. You just live on fucking cupcakes now.
The identity politics, the reason why we're talking about all these things.
Ew, making a difference. Why would you do that?
There is because the corporate news is in bed with the establishment. They are the establishment.
Establishment, a deep state, Illuminati, a deep state, a rhino, a uniparty. Everybody's got two legs in the same pair of pants.
Owned by a handful of billionaires, and now
like whom? By the way, a handful of competing billionaires who would like each other's billions. Just for the record.
Establishment favors the Democratic Party.
Oh my God, Aaron Burnett, don't get me started.
And the Democratic Party.
Where is he looking? It's like he's looking in 3 different places.
Because they have also turned their backs on work.
Is Stu on a... Is his monitor up here?
Workers, which you saw when the Democrats told you had to vote Democrat in the midterms because you had to save democracy. And the first thing they did when they saved democracy was institute fascism and crush a railroad workers strike. So the
Okay. They did not crush a railroad workers strike by any means. I think what they ended up getting, instead of 7 days, they've gotten 5 days. Hold on. Rail workers median salary. Just a minute. Rail workers, let's see. The occupational outlook. Rail workers. This is standardized rail workers. This lovely lady who's got her little emergency vest on and her glass on. This is not, of course, I guess people work on the trains, but these are whatever. They average 64. Base pay is $64,156 a year. That is above the national average. It's $6,000 above the national average. They make $30.84 an hour on average. They only need a high school diploma or equivalent. You can click here to find out how to become one. They have on-the-job training. There are 76,500 jobs in that industry as of 2021. They're going to grow 4% in the number of workers that they will need from 2021 to 2031 over the next 10 years. They're going to gain 3,100 workers. They're going to be hiring 3,100 new people, and then, of course, other people will roll out. But they'll be adding workers, and they're going to keep that number and add 3,100 jobs over the next 10 years, even as people retire. Railroad workers ensure that passenger and freight trains operate safely. They may drive trains, coordinate the activities of trains, or control signals and switches in the rail yard. Nearly all railroad workers are employed in the rail transportation industry. Most work full-time. Some work more than 40 hours a week. How to become a railroad worker? There it is. Their pay medium annual wage for them is $64,150 as of May 2021. That's the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics on that. Let's go with, let's see. National Freight Railroad employees. Here you go. Here's, I just want to, see who we're talking about. The crushed railroad workers in the United States. The average total annual compensation of rail workers involved in the most recent round of national negotiations. This is the ones that were striking. Now, the average ones, right? Average is 68,000. So we're talking about the people who weight that average up. Is projected to be more than $160,000 by the end of the new labor agreements. This includes an average of more than $110,000 in wages per year, plus about $50,000 in medical, retirement, sickness, and other benefits. Freight railroad employees among the best paid in the nation. Employees in the rail transportation industry are among the most highly compensated in the nation. When examined in all U.S. rail transportation employees, including freight railroad rail employees, ranked above 94% of the approximately 130 million employees in other reported industries in average annual compensation as the start of the last bargaining round in BEA 2020 data. The new agreement, which provides 24% pay increases and maintains platinum-level health benefits, ensures rail employees will maintain their favored position in the nation's labor market well into the future. Substantial paid time off, and that was they ended up getting. Railroad employees receive substantial paid time off each year, as well as robust paid sickness benefits for illnesses that exceed 7 days, depending on their craft, what they do particularly. Excluding time off covered by paid sickness benefits, the average rail employee receives 25 to 29 days of paid time off per year, with more senior employees receiving 37 to 39 days of paid time off. That's kind of amazing. Yeah. Compared to car manufacturers, miners, and other stuff like that, railroad employees, because they are, it's sort of, as far as transportation goes, it's in line with sort of the oil industry. It's a necessity. The rest of the economy depends on it. So they've always had more leverage than other people. If a car company's workers strike, then another car company can pick up the slack if they can afford it to pay their workers a little more and put out more cars. But trains occupy the same amount of tracks no matter what the fuck you do. This is the Democrats, apparently, according to Jimmy Dore, who is a millionaire Marxist who lives in the Hollywood Hills and bitches about America nonstop and defends Russian murder squads and rape squads with every breath that he exudes when talking about the Ukraine conflict, thinks that the Democrats bullshitted the American people into fighting for democracy because they were wagging around some shit about women being able to have reproductive rights, which is how they control you. And the first thing they did when they got elected was something that happened before the election. Because the railroad strike, the pause in the railroad strike and negotiation was happening leading up to the election, if you'll recall, involves the highest paid rail workers in the country. People who make almost 3 times the national average because of the pivot point of the industry that they are in. Does anybody here, maybe air traffic controllers? Does anybody know anybody who gets 25 to 29 paid days off a year? That was effectively, quote, crushed in their union negotiations. The fact that this jackass doesn't even care to know. And by the way, can I just say for the record, I'm glad these workers make that much money. They do crucial work. It's backbreaking work in some cases. Oh, it takes them years to work up through the system to a position of seniority, and they spend decades doing it. And they have to be available at odd times. They have to pick up shifts and that kind of stuff. So they have earned over time these wages and benefits. However, because of the nature of their industry, they have a leverage point that other workers do not have, and they have used that to force the system. And the interesting thing is they have Republicans and Democrats, doesn't matter who, you know, unlike like school teachers, you would think school teachers would be equally equivalent, that the strike of school, you know, teachers or janitorial services, that because it shuts down a school and that affects everybody's life and that affects business and all that kind of stuff, you would think that it would have the same kind of, they would have the same kind of leverage that these guys do, but they don't, because trains carry goods from one place to another and everybody is directly reliant on these things. There is no one saying, if only those goods wouldn't get somewhere, my political party could benefit from it. If I could slow, you know, the transport of plastics or of cars or of any of the shit that's on trains, oil, gas, milk, livestock, any of that shit. If they were like, we could just stop that, we could benefit from it on our side of the aisle. Nobody does that. When it comes to teachers, though, the right doesn't mind when teachers strike. They don't give a fuck because they're pushing for the whole system to collapse so they can privatize it anyways. So they're hoping that people, parents especially, root against the teachers because they're sick and tired of this shit or whatever. Like, they believe in their heart they should get paid more, but the striking is a step too far. And so there's more watery room in that for people to not side with them. It is more dense as an issue. Whereas train cars need to get where the fuck they're going. And everybody, whether they know it or not, relies on them getting there on time. So both sides of the political aisle, the entire spectrum politically, supports trains just continuing to roll. So rail workers have more leverage than any other like manual labor workers or you know, high school education level workers in the entire fucking country.
Coming together of corporations and government to screw the citizen is what fascism is, according to Mussolini, who was pretty good at it. And that's
he was pretty good at it, wasn't he? He was terrific at it. You know, it was the savoir faire he put into it. And by the way, that's not at all what happened. The government didn't take over. They don't control that part. As a matter of fact, in this particular case, they helped push the workers' desires further down the line. They brought the companies to the table further than they would, you know, further across the table than they would have gone on their own.
That's exactly what the Democrats did. Every one of them voted to crush the workers' union.
Yes, crush it. The union still exists. They negotiated a 23% increase in pay, and what is it? $50,000 in medical, retirement, sickness, and other benefits a year.
That's their right to organize. And what are they organizing over? Is sick pay. So that's why we're hyper focused on stuff like this. And the reason why they.
And by the way, stuff like this, he means women's rights. He's talking about abortion and LGBTQ rights. That's what he thinks. And to some degree, I suppose like racial justice and police violence, like those kind of things. The Democrats are just using that. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff, according to Jimmy Dore, matters at all. It's just fluff. It's just for show. It's bullshit. Those people, they don't even really need that. Hell knows if they even want it. The Democrats just use that so they can crush the rail union and not allow them to go from $110,000 a year to $160,000.
Have to go after Trump like this is because he's going to win if he runs again, and they know it. Because again,
no, you can. This might be a shock to Jimmy, but you can actually have standards. You know that? You can actually say, like, I'll put up with a bunch of shit, but that's over the line.
Again, people are willing to vote for a billionaire game show host. People know what Trump is. I remember I interviewed a guy who was a chef at a Waffle House in Virginia, and it was right before the 2016 election, and he said, Jimmy, I didn't interview him. Someone else had interviewed him, and I then afterwards I interviewed him.
I didn't write these jokes. These are a dead guy's jokes. We all heard that, right? This is how Jimmy describes everything in his life. I did this thing. Well, I didn't really do it. Somebody else did it, but I had it on my show, which is the same as doing it. It's like I read Kurt's jokes, and it's the Jimmy Dore show. Whoops, hold on one second.
Is because he's going to win if he runs again, and they know it. Because again, people are willing to vote for a billionaire game show host. People know what Trump is. I remember I interviewed a guy who was a chef at a Waffle House in Virginia.
I remember I interviewed a guy who was a chef at a Waffle House in Virginia. First of all, chef and Waffle House don't go, they're cooks and they're proud of it. And then, excuse me?
And it was right before the 2016 election. And
yeah, I mean, it's vivid. You remember, you interviewed this chef from Waffle House in Virginia right before 2016. Yeah, so tell us about when you interviewed this guy.
He said, Jimmy, I didn't interview him. Someone else had interviewed him, and I then afterwards I interviewed him. Anyway, he said, Jimmy, we knew Donald Trump is a loudmouth Yankee who should have had his ass kicked a long time ago, but we're desperate, and he's promising us something, whereas he isn't. And so that people are desperate. And they're done with, they've seen what the Republicans and the Democrats do to them. Workers haven't had a raise since 1980.
Workers haven't had a raise since 1980. Now, you're going to have to forgive Jimmy because he doesn't know anyone who works. He certainly doesn't. He piggybacked on top of TYT's millionaire investment for a few years and then parlayed this shit talk show off of that. He rolls out into his garage and blathers this stuff every day. Once a day. Not like some of us who do it twice a day and again on Saturday. While still doing live shows that are actually funny and full of singing talent.
Think that the democracy was stolen on January 6th, or they were trying to overturn our your democracy was stolen decades ago by corporations, which is why 80% of workers live paycheck to paycheck. Half the country can't afford a phone.
What? Okay, hold on one second. So, Stu Peters' show, they added this stuff afterwards. Well, this doesn't work very well for Jimmy. I'm just going to say, from this, yeah, here's why do 80% of workers live from paycheck to paycheck? This person saying, why do 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck? That's from 2019. Now, I suppose you would look at the current situation. And let's see. Let's go to what? CNBC. Let's see the Guardian. Yeah, here's maybe this is what he was looking at. The Guardian wrote this in. This is Robert Reich writing this. That was the 70. This is what he's citing. This article is 4 years old. Almost 80% of U.S. workers live from paycheck to paycheck. Here's why. And this is 2018. This is before the pandemic. This was an argument about the fight for 15. This is something Jimmy has been pushing. He believes that they should have shut down the government and all that kind of stuff. Would you like to see the current number? Let's see whoops, let me bring that up. Hold on. Where is it? As inflation heats up, where is it? Here it is. This is during during rising inflation. As inflation heats up, 64% of Americans are now living paycheck to paycheck. Gee, it's almost like Biden's attempt to extend the child income tax credit and the extended UI and the support that was put out there and the forgiveness of PPP loans and that kind of stuff made a fucking difference in people's lives. If you'll notice, that number has gone down. Now, Jimmy is still citing stuff from when Trump was president to prove that the Democrats are evil and that Trump did it better.
$100 emergency and 50%.
1 in 2 Americans make less than $30,000 a year. This is half of U.S. workers make less than $30,000 a year. That's what he's citing here. 29 October 2015. Figures released Wednesday by the Social Security Administration show that the majority of workers in the United States earn income that puts them at or near the poverty level for a small family. Over half of U.S. workers make less than $30,000 a year, and a staggering 40% of workers make less than $20,000 a year. The federal poverty line for a family of 4 is $24,000, but that doesn't mean that the workers themselves all have a family of 4, but I get where they're going with this. And the line for a family of 3 is $20,090. Exactly. This is why Democrats try to support people and Republicans are like, fuck them. But Jimmy wants you to think that in a situation where this equation matters, and it does, that it's the Republicans who actually care about it, and Donald Trump in particular, but everybody, the Democrats are just using corporate America to fuck everybody. That you guys, you folks who voted for, I guess in large part, whether it was in the primary or the general for a Democrat, you don't give a shit about this. The person who really gives a shit about these folks is Donald Trump. Now, let's see. Making 20. What percentage of this is 40. Here's another number that may surprise you. Being top of 50% earners, 25,029 a year. Again, towards the higher end of that range. The number of people. This is February 2023. So that number has dropped 6% in the last 2 years. Average. Okay. Let's see. How many Americans? Half of American federal data says live on less than $35,000 annually. That's it. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. 50%. Here you go. 51% of workers wins. This one cited as, what's the date on this one? I'm trying to give me a date. Where is it? They didn't date the article. You sneaky person. There you go. Yeah. So a lot of the statistics that Jimmy is citing are from the latest one is 2019, about like how many people earn what, how many people are in what percentile, the sheer number of people in this, like 20 million people make $0 to $5,000, and that's like hobbyists and that kind of stuff. That's people who work from home or do something else, or they're teenagers or whatever. No one is moving on this compensation, but it is included in this 50% of Americans make less than $20,000 thing. So that includes like high school students or college kids who make money on the side for doing stuff, all the way up to $20,000. That's why, because that's entry level young people. So anyways, let's continue.
Wage earners earn $30,000 or less, not because of Russia, not because of Trump, but because on January 6th, but because your government has been systematic.
Well, your government, and Stu Peters pops up a picture of George Soros.
bought by corporations. And by the way, there's only 6 of them that own all the media right now, which is why people think that Ukraine is really fighting against Putin and we're fighting for the Ukraine people. That's why they think that. And they also think that
what are that they're really Nazis. We've all 6 of these giant billionaire corporations who are in competition with each other are all telling us the same thing because we want the truth, but they want to tell us something else.
COVID lockdowns were necessary, and Dr. Fauci is a hero instead
that's why Stu had
of a mass murdering criminal that he is.
Instead of a mass murdering criminal that he is. Yes, Dr. Fauci is a mass murdering criminal, according to Jimmy Dore. Shit, I will say one thing about this is that as much as we had to hear from Jimmy on this bullshit, at least we didn't have to listen to Stu talk very much. You got to find the silver lining. That's now we're used to Jimmy, kind of gish galloping this bullshit all over the place because he knows that if anybody interrupts in the middle of it, like each thought is so full of shit that if you broke it down, if he was doing an interview with somebody like me that actually knows the points that he's talking about and would do an interrupt in each one of them and not let him just roll through this and create this. I mean, he really, I would say he's good at a gish gallop, but in reality, he doesn't go anywhere where that gallop would be reined in, as it were. So I don't know if he's any good at it. I don't know if anybody can because he threatened that other dude who came and said hi to him at Flappers about shit. But essentially the element there is that if he just babbles out this bullshit, you won't have time to check. And it's a series of just kind of like rudimentary, a truth from 17 years ago or 10 years ago is a truth today, no matter what happened, because the idea that he's selling is it doesn't matter who's in charge. It doesn't matter who gets in office because it's always going to be the same because the corporations do this. Even if things materially change, even if things materially get better. As a matter of fact, reality is Jimmy Dore's biggest enemy. And luckily for him, he has found a financially sound way to feather his nest in a reality-free zone.